Welcome back. After the abrupt removal of its foreign minister, Cheng, China's foreign ministry seems to be trying to erase any mention of him, wiping him from the website completely and sparking increased intrigue about Beijing's opaque political system. According to the New York Times, China's foreign ministry spokesperson called the speculation malicious hype, but was unable to answer dozens of questions about Cheng. And the official transcript of the briefing omitted any question about Cheng, raising even more questions. No reason was given for Cheng's ouster just 7 months into his tenure, but it comes after he had not been seen publicly for weeks, including canceling a meeting with the EU's foreign policy chief and missing a diplomatic summit of Southeast Asian nations. The tumult within China's political system comes as Beijing is facing its own economic challenges. Its post-COVID economy stalled. Youth unemployment is through the roof. The jobless rate among people ages 16 to 24 reached a record high of 21.3% last month, and that's according to the Chinese government. There are some estimates that it's double that. Joining me on set is Dean Cheng, Senior Advisor to the China Program at the U.S. Institute of Peace. Dean, thanks for coming in. So let's start with what's going on with the foreign ministry first. Bringing back Wang Yi, a former foreign minister, you were just telling me he's more powerful than ever. Walk me through that.
So he is not only now the foreign minister, but he, just before he stepped into that position, he headed the party's Central Foreign Affairs Department. So really, in the Chinese system, the party in many ways trumps the state. So now we have combined in the person of Wang Yi both the state position, foreign minister, probably he will become state counselor if Cheng completely disappears, and he has the party. So he gets to set policy and implement policy.
And the last time he was foreign minister, he was not in this role in the Politburo, correct?
No, he was not. That was Yang Jiechi, so who has now basically stepped aside and retired.
So if he's got this much power, and frankly, he was there during a much more peaceful time with the United States, what should we read into this?
Let's remember that when he was foreign minister, China began its wolf warrior diplomacy.
True.
When you had Chinese ambassadors lecturing the French and the Swedes, etc. So I don't think what we're going to see is a stepping back. If anything, Wang Yi is probably going to be as hardline as he was before.
Interesting. Is there, because there's a little bit of the economic situation. She's under some pressure here. This is all his calls. I look at their relationship with the West is causing their economic problems. That's why is there anything to connect these two things?
Well, I don't, let's be honest, we don't really know what happened to Cheng. So it's possible that it's personal issues, it's possible that there's internal scandals, and it's possible that this is a power play.
Could he be scapegoated? That's what I was asking. Is he being set up to be the scapegoat for what?
Well, given that Cheng's rise was attributed to Xi Jinping, making him the scapegoat is certainly a possibility. Xi is saying, it's not my fault, it's this guy. However, I think that much more likely is that we're seeing some other issues developing on the economic side that are separate from Cheng's rise or fall.
The reports about youth unemployment, I mean, if you were to look at, if he looks at his domestic security situation, I'd look at nearly 50% of youth unemployment, which is one estimate. We're not, Chinese government says one thing, and would think that is a worrying sign for me because the youth could come out after me.
Absolutely. And the Chinese figures, when we had access to them, indicated China actually spent more on internal security than external security. That should be very sobering. All those new aircraft carriers, stealth fighters, and all that, and the military was in second place.
To whatever domestic surveillance and things like this?
Exactly. And the reason for that is exactly what you're referring to. It is the reality that you have a lot of unhappy people in China, whether it's unemployed youth, people who are watching property values evaporate, people who are suffering under corrupt and mismanaged local leadership.
Right. So what does this mean for, I mean, look, the fact is, you know, it's ironic, some of our economic woes have to do with the tariffs we've been putting on in this war with China. We've not brought those back, but those have also impacted there. What do you expect? Do you expect an attempt at a reset?
I think what we've seen from the Chinese National People's Congress is a lot of words to that effect, but there's no indication Xi Jinping is actually prepared to do the kind of hard economic reforms which would have to involve him letting go of some of that centralized power.
What would that look like? I mean, is there an idea that he might actually take, that he would release something?
No. I mean, realistically, it would be things like, for example, allowing people to travel more freely within China so that you could put labor where it needs to be. It means basically...
Because I saw young people won't take teaching jobs in certain regions for fear they can't come back to their home city.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or in other cases, because the local areas aren't willing to take people from the countryside and are preferring their own locals. Another piece of this is that state-owned enterprises would have to be held responsible and basically have to show a profit. Instead, right now, they have open access to Chinese state-run banking to meet their bottom line.
A lot of chatter in the what I would call the foreign policy world of media. Are we past peak China? What would you say?
I'm old enough to remember when we had already hit peak oil.
Okay.
And we are now consuming and producing more oil than we ever did. China is still 1.2, 1.3 billion people. And I think it's a little presumptuous to count out a 5,000-year-old civilization.
Is it better to say it's more peak Xi?
That could be. And frankly, I would much rather be Joe Biden than Xi Jinping in terms of the problems confronting.
I don't want to make it seem as if it's a democracy, but there is something about third terms. Anybody, you look at people that try third terms end up regretting a third term.
Absolutely. And because eventually it catches up with you. And there's no one else who's going to be held responsible if you've been in power.
I was just going to say, he has nobody else he can lay this on anymore, right? This is all his people. This is all him now, right?
Never underestimate the power of a state-owned press to change reality. But certainly, realistically speaking, a whole lot of people in China are saying, I'm not better off under you now.
Is there a sense of where is he right now when it comes to bringing back Wang Li? What I'm curious about, is that something that he decided to do or the Politburo told him he had to do?
No, I think at this point, especially after the most recent Congress, he runs the Politburo.
Okay.
But the reality is Xi Jinping has gotten on a tiger he cannot get off of. If he tries to step down, which he's not going to, all those people he has offended with his anti-corruption efforts and all that are going to have their knives out.
He's done his purge, hasn't he?
There has been an ongoing purge since he took office in 2012.
Anyway, Dean Cheng from the U.S. Institute of Peace. Boy, the brain power over there gets better and better. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.